The rain came down in sheets that night, drenching the cracked asphalt and painting the city in streaks of silver. Streetlights flickered uncertainly, struggling against the darkness, while the faint hum of engines echoed through the narrow alleyways. It was nearly midnight when the bikers rolled into the market. A pack of 6, their headlights slicing through the fog like blades. They weren't a gang in the criminal sense, but they had that look. Black leather jackets, steel boots, and the kind of confidence that came from surviving too much and trusting too little. The leader, Aram, killed his engine first. He was tall, mid-30s, eyes sharp as rain-soaked glass. He had been a soldier once, now just a man chasing the road because it was easier than chasing peace. The group had just finished a charity ride, something they did once a month for underprivileged kids. It was Arham's idea, a way to give back. But none of them expected what that night would bring. They parked near the old tea stall, its rusty shutter half open. Steam curled up from the kettle as the old vendor poured chai into chipped cups. The bikers laughed, teased each other, clinking cups and shaking the water from their jackets. That's when Arham noticed him. A small figure standing just beyond the light, shivering in the cold drizzle. The boy couldn't have been older than 10. His clothes were threadbare, clinging to his thin frame, his sandals soaked and falling apart. In his small, trembling hands, he held something, a bicycle. Not a fancy one, not even in good condition. Its paint was faded, the chain rusted, the seat torn. But the way he held it was as if it was all he had left in the world. Aram frowned, setting his cup down. "Hey kid," he called out, his voice softened by instinct. "You okay there?" The boy hesitated. His lips moved but no sound came. He took a few steps forward, his eyes darting nervously between the men. Their jackets, their boots, the thunderous machines behind them. One of the bikers, Zishan, grinned. "Relax, little man. We don't bite." The boy swallowed hard and finally spoke, his voice fragile, almost breaking apart in the rain. "Sir, will you buy my bike?" The laughter stopped. Even the rain seemed quieter for a moment. Aram blinked, confused. "Your bike," he repeated. The boy nodded, clutching the handlebar tighter. "Please sir. I can sell it cheap. Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days." The words hit like a knife. Every man there went still. Arham slowly stood, his leather jacket creaking as he approached. The boy's eyes were wide, full of desperation and fear. But beneath it, there was something else. Dignity. "What's your name, son?" Aram asked gently. "Rafi?" The boy whispered. "My name's Rafi." Aram crouched to his level, rain dripping from his hair. "Where's your mother now?" Rafi looked down, his voice barely audible. "Home, she's sick. She told me not to come out but I can't watch her be hungry anymore." Aram felt something twist inside him. He looked back at his friends. All silent, all watching. The kind of silence that only comes when grown men are reminded of how small the world can make a child feel. "Listen," Aram said softly. "We're not going to buy your bike. But we can help your mother, okay? We'll take you home." The boy immediately shook his head, panic flashing in his eyes. "No, no, please don't come. They'll see." "They?" Zishan asked, exchanging a look with the others. Rafi froze, realizing he had said too much. His small chest heaved as he tried to find words, but tears had already started mixing with the rain on his face. Aram placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Rafi, who will see?" The boy's voice came out in a trembling whisper. "The men, the ones who took everything from us." The street light above them flickered again, and in that brief moment of shadow, the weight of his words sank in. The bikers exchanged wary glances. All traces of their earlier laughter gone. Aram stood, jaw tightening. "Zishan, a deal. Grab the first aid kit and the spare food boxes. We're going with him." The boy tried to protest, but Aram's tone left no room for argument. "It's okay, Rafi. You're safe now." They walked together through the narrow, rain-soaked lanes. The further they went, the darker it became. Old buildings leaned over the alleyways like tired ghosts. The puddles reflected broken neon signs from shuttered shops. Somewhere, a dog barked. Finally, Rafi stopped in front of a small, crumbling house at the edge of the slum. The roof sagged, and one of the windows was covered with cardboard instead of glass. Inside, a dim light flickered. "Please," Rafi said softly. "Don't make noise. She gets scared." Arham nodded, motioning the others to stay back. He ducked under the low doorway, his boots splashing in the muddy floor. The smell hit him first. Damp, rot, and something faintly metallic. Then he saw her. A woman, lying on a thin mattress, wrapped in a worn blanket. Her face was pale, her cheeks hollow. When she heard the footsteps, her eyes fluttered open, fear flashing before recognition could even form. "Rafi," she whispered weakly. "Where were you? I told you not to." She stopped when she saw Arham, the tall stranger with kind eyes and rain dripping from his jacket. Rafi rushed to her side, clutching her hand. "Mommy, don't be mad. I found someone to help. Please don't be mad." The woman blinked, tears filling her eyes. "You shouldn't have gone out in this rain." Aram knelt beside her, setting down a bag of food and bottled water. "Ma'am, I'm Aram. We were just passing through. Please, eat something." She looked at the food as if it were gold. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, deep, distant, and full of warning. And though none of them knew it yet, that night would change everything. For the bikers, for Rafi, and for the woman who had lost everything to men darker than the storm itself. For a moment, the small, broken house felt like a different world. A fragile bubble holding out against the rain, and the weight of the city pressing in from all sides. The flickering bulb cast long, trembling shadows across the cracked walls, and the sound of water dripping from the ceiling mixed with the mother's faint breathing. Arham stood silently, watching as Rafi helped his mother sit up. She was frail, her skin pale against the thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Every movement looked like an effort. Yet her eyes, though tired, carried a stubborn light, a mother's resilience that refused to die, no matter how cruel the world had been. "Here," Arham said, opening the food packet gently. "It's still warm. Please eat something." The woman hesitated. "Sir, I can't accept this. We'll manage." Rafi turned to her, pleading, "Mummy, please. You haven't eaten in 2 days." Her lips quivered. She looked at her son, then at Arham, and her voice finally broke. "Thank you," she whispered. She reached for the bread with trembling hands, taking slow, small bites, as if afraid the food might disappear if she ate too quickly. Rafi sat close beside her, eyes wide with relief, clutching her arm like he was afraid she might vanish. Zishan and Adil stood by the doorway, exchanging silent glances. They had seen poverty before, even helped in slum areas during charity rides. But this was different. There was something haunted about this house. Something that made the air feel heavy, as though sorrow itself had soaked into the walls. Arham looked around quietly. The furniture was almost non-existent. One broken chair, a tin trunk pushed against the wall, and a few clothes hanging from a rope. Near the corner, a small framed photo was lying face down on the floor. He picked it up carefully, brushing off the dust. It was a family picture. A man, the woman, and a younger Rafi. The man stood tall, smiling, with an arm around his wife. Aram could tell from the faded uniform that he had been a factory worker. He turned to the woman. "Your husband." Her eyes dimmed. "He's gone," she said softly. "They took him away." Aram frowned. "They?" She hesitated. For a long moment she seemed torn, between silence and the desperate need to speak. Finally, her voice came out barely above a whisper. "The men who owned the factory, the ones he worked for. He spoke up about their cheating. Said they were stealing from the workers. That night, they came for him. Said he'd stolen from them instead. The next morning, the police told me he was gone." Her hands began to tremble as she clutched the blanket closer. "I tried to fight. But they burned our house, took everything. Even my husband's savings. Rafi was so small then, we ran here and never looked back." Arham's chest tightened. Zishan cursed under his breath, fists clenching. And no one helped. No police, no neighbors. She gave a small, bitter laugh. "Help? Who helps the poor, sir? The police take money to listen. The neighbors, they were Arab. The men still come sometimes to remind me to stay silent." Aram looked at her sharply. "They still come?" She nodded, her eyes darting toward the window. "Last week. They took the last bit of rice we had. Said it was rent for the land that isn't even theirs. I've been hiding since." Outside, thunder cracked again, closer this time. Adil stepped forward. "Boss." He muttered quietly. "We can't just leave them here." Aram didn't reply immediately. His eyes stayed on Rafi, the boy sitting beside his mother, trying to look brave. Something inside Aram stirred, an ache he thought he'd buried long ago. Memories of his own childhood, when his father never came home one night, when hunger made pride feel like a luxury. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet, laying a few bills on the table. "This should help for a few days. Tomorrow? We'll come back with more supplies." The woman's eyes widened. "Sir, I can't take that. It's not charity." Arham interrupted gently. It's a promise. No one should go hungry while we ride these roads. She looked at him for a long moment, then bowed her head. May God bless you, sir. Rafi tugged at Arham's sleeve. Sir, will you really come back? Arham smiled faintly. I gave my word, didn't I? As they left the house, Rafi followed them to the door, clutching his small bicycle. Sir, he called softly, I'll fix it. Next time, maybe you can ride it. Arham chuckled despite the heaviness in his chest. Maybe I will, champ. Maybe I will. The rain had slowed to a drizzle when they stepped outside. But something in Arham's gut wouldn't settle. The street was too quiet. The shadows too still. He turned to Zishan. Keep your eyes open. I've got a bad feeling about this place. They mounted their bikes, the engines rumbling softly through the night. As they turned the corner, a faint movement caught Arham's eye. A figure standing at the far end of the alley, half hidden by the fog. A man, watching. He slowed the bike, eyes narrowing. But when he blinked, the figure was gone. Only the echo of boots fading into the darkness remained. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. The bikers gathered at their usual garage, sipping tea and planning a return trip to Rafi's home. But before they could leave, an old newspaper boy came running down the street, waving a crumpled sheet. Sir! Sir! There's been trouble in the slum, he shouted breathlessly. Arham's heart skipped. What kind of trouble? The boy hesitated, eyes wide. A fire, sir. Someone burned down a house last night. For a moment, no one moved. Then Arham dropped his cup, tea splattering across the floor. Rafi, he whispered. Without another word, the engines roared to life. And 6 bikes tore through the morning traffic like thunder chasing lightning. The road blurred beneath them, but one thought kept pounding in Arham's head like a heartbeat. They came back for her. The air was thick with smoke long before they reached the slum. Acrid, heavy, choking. The kind that burns the throat and leaves the eyes stinging. As Arham and the bikers turned the last corner, the sight before them hit like a punch to the gut. Where the small, fragile house once stood, only blackened wood and ash remained. The roof had collapsed inward and a thin column of smoke still curled into the gray morning sky. Neighbors stood in clusters, murmuring, staring. But no one dared step too close. Arham killed his engine and jumped off the bike, boots splashing in puddles darkened by soot. His eyes scanned the wreckage, panic rising with every heartbeat. Rafi! He shouted, voice raw. Rafi! Are you here? Zishan and Adil joined him, tossing aside debris, coughing as dust filled the air. Adil found a burnt cooking pot, still warm. Zishan kicked through the remains of the wall, his face hard. Then, a sound, faint, from somewhere nearby. A soft whimper. Arham froze. There, he yelled, sprinting toward the noise. He pulled away a half-burned door and found Rafi, crouched behind an overturned crate, clutching his broken bicycle. His face was streaked with ash and tears. His small body shook uncontrollably. Arham dropped to his knees beside him. Rafi, you're okay, you're okay. The boy looked up, eyes wide with terror. They came back, sir. He whispered. They came back last night. Where's your mother? Arham's voice cracked despite his effort to stay calm. Rafi's lips trembled. He pointed toward the ruins. She told me to hide. Said not to make a sound. Then the fire started, and I tried to help but... His voice broke into sobs. She wouldn't wake up. Arham's chest tightened until he could barely breathe. He looked toward the charred remains of the mattress inside the house. A shape half, buried beneath collapsed beams. His throat closed. Zishan placed a trembling hand on Rafi's shoulder. Tears burning his own eyes. She saved you, little man. Arham stood slowly, the smoke stinging his eyes as he turned toward the neighbors. Who did this? He demanded. A man in the crowd, a wary old shopkeeper, shook his head nervously. Sir, please, you shouldn't get involved. Those men are dangerous. They run this area. If anyone speaks. Woo! Arham barked. Give me a name. The man hesitated, then whispered, Rashid Malik. He owns half the factories down by the river. His men come here at night. No one stops them. Rashid Malik, the name hit like a curse. Arham had heard it before. Whispered in mechanic shops, printed in half-forgotten news stories. A businessman with clean suits and dirty hands. Zishan clenched his jaw. We can't just let this go. Arham looked down at Rafi, who was still holding his bike. His face streaked with soot and grief. The sight ignited something deep inside. Not just anger, but purpose. He crouched beside the boy again, his voice steady. Rafi, listen to me. You're coming with us now. You're not alone anymore. The boy didn't answer. He just nodded weakly, gripping Arham's jacket like it was the only solid thing left in his world. They took him back to the garage. A large, open space behind an old warehouse where the bikers kept their machines and tools. It wasn't much, but it was safe. They washed the suit off him, gave him food, and wrapped him in a clean blanket. For a long time, Rafi didn't speak. He just sat in silence, staring at the floor, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edge of a wrench lying nearby. As night fell, the bikers gathered around a small table. The sound of distant traffic echoed through the half-open shutters. Zishan slammed his fist against the table. "Boss, we can't sit here. The kid's mother is gone, her house is ashes, and the man responsible is probably drinking tea in his office like nothing happened." Adil nodded. "We can't go to the police either," she said there in his pocket. Arham stared at the flickering bulb above them, his mind spinning. He had seen men like Rashid before. Men who thought power meant immunity, who fed on fear because no one dared fight back. Finally, he spoke. "We don't go to the police." Zishan frowned. "Then what? We go to him." A stunned silence fell. The others exchanged looks, half shock, half anticipation. "Boss," Adil said slowly, "Rashid Malik isn't some street thug. He's got bodyguards, cameras, police protection. I don't care." Arham cut in sharply. "He burned a woman alive to silence her. He thinks no one will stand up because everyone's scared. We'll show him he's wrong." For the first time in days, a flicker of something returned to Rafi's eyes. Not hope, exactly, but the faint awareness that someone was fighting for him. Arm leaned forward. "Zishan, dig up everything you can on Rashid Malik, his factories, his properties, his routine. Adil, call the NGO we worked with last month. Tell them there's a boy who needs protection. We're not letting Rafi disappear into the system." Zishan grinned grimly. "Now you're talking." As the night deepened, the garage filled with the low hum of planning, whispered strategies, scribbled notes, and the metallic clicks of tools being set aside in favor of something heavier. Outside, Rafi sat on an old tire, staring at the stars barely visible through the haze. He clutched a small photo he'd pulled from the wreckage. The same one Aram had found earlier, edges now singed. When Arham came over, the boy spoke for the first time in hours. "Sir, do you think Mommy can see me from up there?" Aram looked up at the faint pinpricks of light in the sky. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think she's watching. And I think she's proud of you." Rafi nodded, wiping his eyes. "Then I want to make her proud. I want to tell those men, they can't hurt us anymore." Aram felt the words hit deep. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You will, Rafi, you will. But not with anger. With truth." Behind them, Zishan approached, holding a stack of printed documents. "Boss," he said quietly, "you'll want to see this. Turns out Malik's not just a factory owner. He's laundering money through fake worker accounts. Your boy's father was right." Aram's eyes hardened. "Then we finish what that man started." The roar of thunder rolled again outside. Not from the sky this time, but from the 6 engines that would soon carry justice on 2 wheels. The following morning carried an air of stillness that felt unnatural. Like the city itself was holding its breath. The streets were already alive with noise, vendors shouting, engines revving. Life moving on as if the night's tragedy had been swallowed whole. But in Arham's garage, something had changed. On the table lay a map of the industrial district. A maze of factories, warehouses, and unmarked buildings owned by Rashid Malik. Zishan had been up all night digging through public records, business registries, even the dark corners of online forums where whispers had teeth. What he found painted a story of corruption older than Rafi himself. "Look here," Zishan said, tapping the map. "This warehouse by the river, it's not listed under Malik's company, but all his trucks pass through it before deliveries. That's where the fake payroll money is laundered." Arham leaned over the table, eyes sharp. "Security. Light during the day, heavy at night," Zishan replied. "Cameras, 2 guards at the gate, maybe more inside." Adil frowned. "Boss, this sounds more like a military op than a ride." Aram gave a faint, humorless smile. "Then it's a good thing I've done a few." He turned to the others. "We're not storming in. We're gathering proof. Enough to expose him. If we can get documents, footage, anything that ties Malik to those accounts, I can get it to someone who'll make it public." Rafi, sitting quietly in the corner, looked up. "Sir, will that make him stop hurting people?" Arham's voice softened. "Yes, Rafi. When people see the truth, even the powerful have nowhere left to hide. The boy nodded, clutching his blanket tighter. That afternoon, they rode out in pairs, blending into the chaotic pulse of the city. The sun shimmered off the river's oily surface as they approached the industrial zone. A place that smelled of metal, sweat, and secrets. The warehouse loomed ahead, gray and silent, surrounded by high fences topped with rusted barbed wire. Trucks came and went through a large steel gate. Workers moved like shadows, their faces blank, their bodies bent under the weight of long hours and fear. Aram parked behind a stack of shipping containers. Through binoculars, he watched as a black SUV pulled up near the main office. A man stepped out, dressed in a tailored suit, gold cufflinks glinting in the light. Even from a distance, there was no mistaking him. Rashid Malik. He moved with the arrogance of someone untouchable, barking orders at a foreman, occasionally laughing. The kind of laughter that never reached his eyes. Arham lowered the binoculars slowly. "That's our man." Zishan grinned darkly. "You think he'd sign an autograph?" Arham ignored the joke. "A deal, keep your engine running." "Zishan, you're with me. We'll go in through the side. Check for a back entry." They waited until one of the trucks left, using the noise as cover. Moving quickly, they slipped along the fence's shadow and found a section where the wire had rusted enough to pry open. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of oil and paper. Tons of ledgers, boxes, and machinery humming low. RM motioned for silence. They crept through the narrow passage until they reached a small office with a metal door slightly ajar. Inside, computers blinked quietly beside stacks of files. "Jackpot," Zishan muttered, pulling out his phone to record. He scanned the room, focusing on a ledger marked with the name Malik Textiles. RM flipped it open. Page after page listed worker payments. But the signatures were fake, repeating the same handwriting over dozens of names. "He's paying ghosts," Arham murmured. "Stealing wages meant for real people." Just as Zishan started snapping pictures, the sound of boots echoed from the hallway. "Someone's coming," Arham hissed. They ducked behind a stack of crates as two guards entered, chatting casually. "Malik's meeting some politician tonight," one of them said. "Big deal. Wants all this money cleaned up before then." The other laughed. "That guy never stops. Poor fools who try to cross him end up disappearing. Like that factory worker last year." "What was his name?" "Sef," the first replied. "The one who accused Malik of stealing from the workers. They said he ran away, but..." Arm's blood ran cold. "Safe." The name pulsed in his head like a drumbeat. That was Rafi's father. Zishan looked at him, realization dawning in his eyes. Arm's jaw clenched until it hurt. When the guards left, Arm grabbed the ledger tightly. "We're done here. Let's go." They slipped back through the fence, returning to the bikes. By the time the engines roared to life again, the sun was already setting behind the smokestacks, staining the sky blood red. Back at the garage, Arham spread the photos and documents across the table. The others crowded around silent. "This proves it," Zishan said. "Every word Rafi's mother said. They killed his father to protect this." Idil slammed his fist against the wall. "So we take it to the media." Arham nodded slowly. "I know someone. An old friend, now a journalist. If we can get him this tonight, he'll publish it. But Malik won't sit quietly once he knows we've been inside." As if on cue, the faint hum of engines grew louder outside. Not theirs. Zishan peeked through the shutter and cursed. Black SUVs. 3 of them. Armed men. Arm's mind raced. How the hell? Then he saw it. On the workbench, beside Rafi's small blanket, a cell phone blinked with a red light, a tracker. Someone had slipped it in while they were gone. "Everyone move," Arm barked. "Out the back, now." The first gunshot shattered the window before they even reached the door. Sparks flew as bullets ripped through the metal siding. Rafi screamed, covering his ears. Arham grabbed him, shielding his small body as Zishan and Adil returned fire with warning shots from their sidearms. Not to kill, just to slow the attackers. Engines roared to life again. This time their own. 6 bikes burst from the rear alley, tires screaming, smoke trailing behind as they vanished into the maze of the city's underbelly. Behind them, the garage burned. Rafi clung to Arham's waist, his voice barely audible over the thunder of engines. "Sir, are they going to find us?" Arham didn't answer right away. The wind whipped against his face, carrying the smell of gasoline and ash. "Not if I find them first," he said finally, his eyes hard as steel. Night fell fast, swallowing the city in a haze of smoke and neon. The bikers raced through empty streets like ghosts. weaving between alleys and bridges, until they were sure they'd shaken their pursuers. When they finally stopped, it was at an abandoned train depot at the city's edge, a graveyard of rusted tracks and silence. The engines died one by one, leaving only the sound of Rafi's shallow breathing and the soft ticking of cooling metal. He clung to Arham's jacket, his small hands trembling. Arham crouched down beside him. "You're safe now, Rafi, I promise." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. Rashid Malik's men were relentless, and the fire at the garage had made their message clear. You can't win. The others gathered around, bruised, exhausted, but burning with anger. Zishan spat on the ground. "They tracked us like dogs. We can't stay here long." Adil paced back and forth. "We lost everything. The bikes, the documents, the footage. All gone." Arham shook his head. "Not everything." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. Blackened around the edges but still intact. "The ledger. I backed it up before we left." Zishan's face broke into a grin. "You sly old soldier." Arham's eyes flicked toward the distant skyline. "Now we just need to get it to someone who can use it." He took out his phone, a cheap burner, and dialed a number from memory. After a few rings, a gruff voice answered. "Arham. Been a while." "Same voice, same trouble," Arham said quietly. "I need your help, Nabil." Nabil Khan, once a fellow soldier, now a journalist for one of the biggest news channels in Karachi. Honest to a fault, which was exactly why he'd been beaten, threatened, and nearly killed more than once. "I've got proof against Rashid Malik," Arham said. "Money laundering, fake wages, murder cover-ups. But he's already after us. My garage is gone, and there's a kid whose parents he destroyed." There was a pause. Then Nabil's voice hardened. "Bring me what you have. But be careful. Malik's got half the media in his pocket. Only one person I trust at the station right now. Send me a safe location. Already on your phone." The call ended. Arham stood, his decision already made. "We ride again. We deliver this to Nabil before dawn." The others nodded, no hesitation. Loyalty wasn't something Arham ever asked for. He earned it. And tonight, it burned brighter than fear. They prepped the bikes in silence, patching bullet holes and checking fuel lines. Rafi sat nearby, watching, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and determination. "Sir," he said softly, "can I come with you?" Arham looked at him, really looked. The boy had lost everything, but in his eyes there was something fierce now, something alive. "You stay close," Arham said. "No matter what happens, you don't let go." Rafi nodded solemnly. By midnight, they were back on the road. 6 engines tearing through the city's veins. The rain had returned, light but steady, glinting off their helmets like shards of glass. They moved in formation, disciplined and tight. Arham led the way, the USB drive tucked safely in his jacket. Behind him, Zishan kept watch on their flank, while Adil monitored the roads ahead through an earpiece connected to a police scanner. But Malik's reach stretched far. At the edge of the financial district, a black SUV screeched out of a side street. Blocking their path, 2 more appeared behind them. "Trap," Adil shouted. Arham revved his bike, swerving hard. "Split up. We regroup at the old clock tower." The group scattered in 3 directions. Engines screaming, tires spitting water. The SUVs roared after them, headlights flashing through the rain. Arham glanced back to see Rafi clinging tight, his face buried in Arham's back. "Hold on, kid," he yelled, turning sharply into a narrow alley. The bike skidded, barely missing a stack of crates. The alley opened onto a bridge, slick with rain, half lit by flickering street lamps. 2 SUVs followed. Zishan's voice crackled through the comms. "Boss! Coming up on your left." Arham looked over to see Zishan's bike cutting across the opposite lane, flanking the SUVs. He tossed something underhand. A small metal canister that clattered across the bridge before bursting into a plume of smoke. The SUVs swerved wildly, brakes screeching. Arham shot through the gap, heart pounding. "Good timing, brother." Zishan's laugh echoed through the static. "You still owe me dinner." They regrouped near the old clock tower. A derelict landmark overlooking the city, its face frozen at 3D17 since the blackout years ago. The rain slowed to a mist as they parked beneath it, the glow of distant billboards flickering across their helmets. Rafi was shaking, but he didn't cry. Instead, he looked up at Arham. "Sir, why are they doing this? Why don't they just stop?" Arham crouched in front of him, his voice low. "Because men like Malik are afraid of one thing. The truth. It burns louder than any fire they can start." Rafi nodded, gripping his small bike chain like a talisman. Zishan walked over, scanning the area. The station's 3 kilometers from here. If we leave now we can. He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes narrowed. Boss, look up there. Aram followed his gaze. Across the street, under the dim glow of a billboard, stood Rashid Malik himself. Flanked by 4 men in suits, their silhouettes sharp against the rain. He wasn't smiling this time. Malik stepped forward, his voice carrying across the empty road. You think you can ruin me, Aram? You think the world cares about one dead woman and her brat? Rafi flinched. Aram's fists tightened around his gloves. Malik's smirk returned. Give me what you stole, and maybe I'll let you live. Aram's voice was calm, steady, but colder than the rain. You already took everything from them. You're not taking this. Malik chuckled. Then die with your charity. He raised his hand. Gunfire split the night. The bikers dove for cover as bullets shattered the air. Zishan fired back, sparks flying from the pavement. Aram shielded Rafi behind a fallen signpost, adrenaline roaring in his veins. Zishan smoke. Now. Canisters rolled across the street, spewing thick gray fog. The world vanished into chaos, shouts, gunfire, and the roar of engines. Aram grabbed Rafi and mounted the bike again. Hold tight. He yelled, twisting the throttle. The rear tires screamed as they launched forward, straight through the smoke. As they vanished into the mist,